Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast, where stories shine and voices are heard. I'm your host, Chris Dabbs, and today we have a deeply moving and inspiring episode in store. Joining us for the very first time is author Tamara L. Miller, and she's here to talk about her newly republished memoir, What the Hell Just Happened? It's a candid, heart-wrenching account of sudden loss, unexpected grief, and the profound journey of rediscovering life after tragedy. After 58 beautiful years of marriage, Tamara's world turned upside down in an instant. But with honesty and grace, she shares the shock of widowhood, the practical hurdles she never saw coming, and the spiritual path that she followed in hopes of reconnecting with her late husband. This is more than just a story about loss. It's a guide for navigating life when the unthinkable happens, and a call to be prepared for the moments we never think will come. So, grab a quiet space, open your heart, and join us as we talk with Tamara L. Miller about love, loss, and the strength to keep going. Welcome, Tamara. It's lovely to meet you.
Glad to be here.
Excellent.
Glad to share my story.
Yeah, right. So this is a poignant story, but a story of hope as well. What motivated you really to write What the Hell Just Happened? I mean, was there a specific moment that made you realize that your story needed to be told?
Yes, when I ran to crossroads of things that surprised me. See, I really thought I was an independent woman and could handle anything that came my way.
Sure.
But I was fooled. Little things like your husband does things automatically, like you probably do yourself. And you don't think, who will do that when that other person is gone? It was simple things like the sprinkler system. Who works the sprinkler system? And what do you do about it? And I interviewed a few other widows, and they ran the same thing. One of my friends says, I had it all figured out. I saw 10 on the dial, so I put it on 10. I thought it would come on at 10 o'clock at night. Instead, it ran 10 hours. So it's little things like that. And where's your electrical outlet on the house? Where's that? You have to know where that is. How about the water shut off? The water shut off. You never pay any attention to that. He'll always take care of that. There were so many things that came up that I didn't know. So that was the purpose of the book, to let women know, and men, they're the other spouse. There are things that you need to know in case you're ever the one left behind.
That's a good point, isn't it, actually? All those practical things we just don't think about, do we?
No.
Yeah, right. How do you start the lawnmower or whatever it is? Yeah, they may seem small and inconsequential, but they're really important, right? Because I guess you didn't need to be having to think about things like that at that time, did you?
No.
That's the
point. He was going to be here forever.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the last thing you want to do is be wasting time thinking about little practical things. I can imagine, honestly, Terry. Well, you describe a life that felt full, right? You had a loving marriage, yeah? Children,
yes.
Grandchildren, a future unfolding beautifully with your family. I mean, what was life like for you and your husband in those final months together?
Well, we have a mobile home on the Colorado River. We're a skiing family.
Oh, nice.
So we would usually go there for a 3-4 day break about every other week. We also love Vegas, and we went enough where we were comped for our rooms and shows. So that was a lot of fun. He loved to fish, so the river played that part, and I like to read, and I like to knit and do things like that. So those times were really valuable, and we had a good time. And of course, there was a lot of times the kids came along. Like I said, we were a water skiing family, had 2 boats, and the weather was beautiful there. Life was good. Life was good. Yes.
Sounds it. It sounds idyllic. I've got to say, I like Vegas as well, to be honest. But I'll have to get some tips from you on how to get comped, I think. So you were married for 58 years. Wow,
yes.
That's an incredible bond. I've been with my wife for 22 years, and we were just talking before I started and mentioning you with 58. And it's like, wow, I can't imagine it. But I guess it probably went by really quickly because everything, what you enjoyed your marriage, right? So,
Well, we were 18 and 19 when we got married.
all right.
So
No,
literally, we raised each other.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I actually,
Yes,
yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. So you go through those little things at the beginning of life, don't you, where you're basically teenagers. Yeah, I
yes.
get what you're saying. I get it. So you had this incredible marriage, which is fantastic, but I suppose it's time really to sort of like get serious about things. I mean, can you walk us through what happened the day that everything changed for you?
The worst day of my life.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, we were heading to the river, like I said, for 3 or 4 day mini vacation. And it's a long drive, it's 4 hours, and it was hot. And when we get there, the first thing he wants to do is mow the yard. And I said, honey, we got there, and I said, honey, please don't mow the yard. It's so hot outside. Wait till it cools off in the evening. Well, he agreed with me for once. So he says, okay, I'm going to go in and watch television. Well, he was a NASCAR fan, so I figured that's what he's going to watch.
Mm.
So I stayed outside and I was just putting the patio chairs up and stuff. I bet I was out there only 10 minutes. And I walked in the house and there he was in the recliner staring into space. I ran to him and I grabbed him by the shoulders and I shook him and I shook him and I said, don't do this now. Don't do this now. Of course, I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe a heart attack or something. So I called 911 right away. And she says, pick him up and put him on the floor. I said, that's dead weight. I don't think I can do it. She says, pick him up and put him on the floor. Well, when you need to, the adrenaline runs in. So I put my arms underneath his shoulders and I talked to him. I says, honey, you're going to have to help me with this because I'm going to have to put you on the floor. I picked him up and I laid him on the floor. So I told her, I said, okay, he's on the floor. She said, do you know how to do chest compressions? Well, it's funny. I had watched a hospital show just the following couple days before that, and that's what they were doing with chest compressions. I said, yes, I think so. She says, well, you better start right now. So I did. I was pumping his chest and I was counting. And then I said, are they coming? Where are they? When are they going to get here? And I knew the hospital was on an Indian reservation and it was probably 35 or 40 minutes away. But it seemed like the time was just so long. And I kept yelling in the phone, when are they going to get here? When are they going to get? She says, keep your compressions going, dear. Keep your compressions going. I said, okay. And I would talk, Randall, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Of course, there was nothing. And I would keep pressing and I'd keep yelling, where are they? And she says, well, some might be coming on the river, from the river and up from there. So that pacified me a little bit. I knew it was going to take a little bit longer. They finally got there and they said there was about 4 of them. Thank you, ma'am. You have everything under control. Please step aside and let us take over. And they did. So I sat on the couch and watched them pump his chest, give him oxygen. And I just waited for him to move. And he didn't move at all. And I had this little dog that was watching everything. And she was sitting in my lap and watching it too. And she started to shake. You know, animals have a sense of things. So we sat there and they finally came over to me and they said, well, we're going to take him to the hospital. I said, okay. So I figured he was going to get immediate care there, not that you can do in the mobile home. So they says, I want you to go out on the riverside and there's an ambulance also coming on the water. Go out there and wave him down and tell him where we are. So that gave me something to do. So I went out there. Sure enough, they came running. They were doctors too and had their bag and they came and went into the mobile home. And they worked on him for a little bit. Finally, they said, well, we're going to take him to the hospital. I said, okay. So I walked outside with them as they were putting in an ambulance. I says, can I go with you? And they says, well, we really don't have room because we have to be working on him. So, but you can come right ahead. I said, okay. So they left, and the fireman came up to me and he says, do you think you can drive? And of course, my answer was, of course I can drive. And I stood there and I was shaking. I said, no, I don't think I can drive right now. He says, well, come on. He says, I'll take you. So I put the dog back in the house. And we took off and we chatted for a while. And I was telling him how wonderful our life was. And our house was being paid for and this and that for the kids. And he says, well, he says, I've seen this happen before. He says, don't get your hopes up too high. So let's hope for the best. So when we got to the hospital, we went in. He says, let me go check on him. They wouldn't let me in yet. So he went and came back. Good sign. They've got a heartbeat. Oh, okay. So what this is, in my mind, was a heart attack. And he will probably have to get better, but we'll have a time. We'll have to take care of him. Life will change a little bit, but we'll get this taken care of. It's a heart attack. They came in and they said, we're going to air vac him to Lake Havasu, where there was a bigger hospital. I thought, great, they've got better doctors there, and they'll take care of this and the heart attack and everything. Again, I said, can I go with you? Well, there's only certain weight you can go in the helicopter. So they said no. So when I talked to him, I told Randall, I says, I'm right here. And I said, they're going to take you to the air vac and they're going to have a doctor there. No response, of course, from him. I was just talking, you hear that they can hear what you're saying. So they took off and the fireman took me back to the mobile home. By this time, I had called my daughter and my son, and they were on their way, but that's 4.5 hours. There was a couple we knew that had just pulled into the park, and my daughter had contacted them, and they said, come on, we'll take you to the hospital in Havasu. So that's about an hour drive. So when we got there, then they still wouldn't let me see him, So they just had me sit and wait, and they said, you'll have to wait, and the doctor will talk to you. So I had to wait about an hour. In the meantime, I was thinking my daughter and son had got there, but they hadn't yet. And so the doctor says, come on, he says, and I'll tell you what we're looking at. So I got in there and he says, I can fix a heart. Oh, what a relief that was. He said, but I can't fix a brain. He said he's had a blood clot that has shot to his heart. And he says, and it's gone to his brain. He says, I'm not sure what the outcome is. He says, we'll put him on life support and let's give it a day or so. Well, by this time, my kids came in and family members came in. The word spread really fast. The grandkids were there. His sister was there. Cousin was there from out of state. So there was about 15 of us. So I had a lot of comfort from them, and they were all scared too. And I told them too what the doctor had said. So then the doctor says, well, we'll keep him here during the night and we'll see what happens. So they went, couple of them went to my mobile home, other ones got a motel room, and I stayed there with him all night. And I talked to him, told him I was there and things that we were going to do when we got home, stuff like that. Meanwhile, the next morning, all the kids, everything, they came and they says, Mom, we want to talk to you. And I said, what? They said, we've talked, and as active as Dad is, if he can't come back and be the dad that he's always been, we need to let him go. I said, I feel the same way. I wouldn't want him his life in a wheelchair or anything like that. So they said the doctor was going to come in, so we all were in the room. The doctor came in, and he started to tell us, that some people prolong the care with the support. I said, just a minute. I said, I want to let you know that the family has talked, and we've decided if he can't return to quality of life and the Randall and husband and grandfather that he is, we need to let him go. He says that was really a wise decision. So we all sat and stood and talked to Randall. The one little granddaughter, she was only 6, and she was so close to him. And I asked her, I said, you want to come in and see Papa? She hesitated a minute. She says, come in. Of course, that was awful for her to see all that, I said, come around here and let's talk to him. So she came around. We took Papa's hand and we talked to him and everything. And I was so glad we did that because she's the only one that remembers Papa. All the other grandkids, didn't have that opportunity. So it was later on in the day, and the nurse came in and she said, it's time to turn off the machines. Does anyone want to stay in here while we do that? And they said, no. I said, well, I do. So I stood with him and talked to him. When they turned off the machine, it's a terrible thing to see because all the liquid that he had from his body left his body. And I could see him actually shriveling up. And I couldn't stand it. So I ran out of the room. My son was right there, held me in his arms, and we all cried. Well, he was gone, but we were sure he was in a better place. One of the things that happened after that, you want to know about what happens when someone passes away in another state?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. You have to have a permit to get him home.
Right.
So that takes a couple days. Then we had to have the autopsy. The doctor has to say that he's deceased. And so they gave us a choice of 3 mortuaries we have to send him to hold him. We have a mortuary in our area that we all go to, and of course, that was in our family trust where he would go. So we made an appointment with that mortuary to go in and talk to them that next day. My son and daughter went with me. And so they said, we need to pick out a casket. I says, oh no, we'll pick out the casket when we get home in the mortuary. She says, well, you might rethink that. If we can't transport him in a casket, we will just have to put him in a pine box. That sounds awful. So we had to pick a casket out of a catalog. And that was really cold. When we started doing that, I got up and I ran out of the room. The kids followed me. I said, I just can't do this. I can't do this. My son says, well, Mom, we're here. We'll help you pick it out. So we picked out the casket. And then they said, will you be sending some clothes? I says, I guess so. She says, if you don't, we'll be sending him home in his underwear.
Right.
Funny things happen that aren't so funny,
Yeah.
So, of course, when we got home, I sent his clothes, and I was constantly calling our mortuary. Is he there yet? Is he there yet? And it took 2 or 3 days before he got there. And, of course, when we got there, we knew we all went in, we knew he was safe and at home. So then we had to plan the funeral. You want to know about that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I really appreciate how open you are about this, because obviously, where do you go in this aftermath? I mean, you've got the funeral to plan for. You've been to the mortuary. the casket. I mean, what was the most unexpected emotional challenge in those early days of your grief there?
Well, first of all, getting a permit to bring him home.
Yeah, bureaucracy.
Okay. Yeah. And then so at least we were familiar with the mortuary.
Mm.
So now we had to find a burial plot. Well, I knew where he wanted to be buried in a local cemetery here because his mother and dad were there. And we had argued about that. I wanted to be buried where my mom and dad was, but he went out.
Mm.
So we were at the cemetery and we were standing around. It's a small cemetery, so there's not a lot of areas that are available. And we were standing by his mother and father. And my son says, "What spot here? Is this a spot?" And this guy says, "Let me see." And he got on his computer. He says, "Yes, that's available." He was buried next to his dad. Who would ever think anything like that?
Mm.
So now the funeral. Where are you going to have it? That was an easy thing for me because a couple months before that, we had been to a funeral of one of my son's friends' father had passed away. And Randall said to me, he says, "If I ever die, this is where I want to have my celebration of life." I said, "Okay, you got it."
Mm.
So, of course, we made arrangements for there. Of course, open bar. He wouldn't have it any other way. The funeral place was packed outside, upstairs. We had to get extra traffic escort because there was more than 250 people there. So they had to have all that escort. So I could say the family was very happy for his celebration of life. It's where he wanted to be as far as his end and all his friends there. And it's a very closing thing. A funeral is a very closing thing. And of course, all our friends were there, people we hadn't seen in a long time, people that we didn't even know he knew.
Right.
So we really figured we gave him a good send off, a good goodbye.
Yeah. So this is the
Well,
whole family.
then what happens?
Oh,
Well, this is just really short.
yeah.
The kids go home. They
Right.
all go home to their family. Where do I go? Back to my house. There's no one there.
Mm.
That's quite an eye opener.
I think that's the thing. You've got the support of your family in the immediate aftermath, right? So to help you to be able to do those things, the mortuary and everything else. And then you've got to come to terms with, as you say, the house being empty. I'm sorry to say these things. Let me know if I'm, upsetting you, as it were. But
Oh no, no.
I think that many people assume that long-term partners, whether they're married or not,
The audio
all of
just
these
got
things, all
stuck.
these practical.
Oh, there you go. You're stuck. Something's wrong with the audio.
Just made you think, oh my gosh, do you
There
know
you
what?
are.
That's so simple.
I'm sorry, your question broke up.
Oh, sorry, right. So what sort of things were you suddenly navigating on your own? But I don't mean like no, I don't mean kind of hard, difficult things, if you know what I mean, like dealing with banks or anything else like that, even though that is difficult. But even just day-to-day things, what sort of things like that were a bit of a shock?
Well, he went on a lot of fishing trips. So I had been home alone a lot. It never
Right.
bothered me. I could be home a week. It never bothered me alone. But now he was gone. Something happened. I was afraid. I got scared. At night, I could hear things. He was just such a support, I guess. But oh, so I called security and had security put in the house right away. That was one of the things. Then decisions. You make so many decisions together, not even knowing that you're doing it together, you know. And I had a really hard one. My son had a spot on his back, and I told him he had to go to the dermatologist. Well, he didn't go right away, and I made him. He went because I nagged him. And he called me and he says, Mom, I guess I've got melanoma. He did not know what melanoma was.
Mm.
I did. So I was scared that he was going to die, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. And that was just a terrible time where life is so empty and you feel so lonely. And I thought if just Randall was here so we could talk about it. But we got through it. He's a good man, and he did his scans and he did his chemo, and he's clean now. And thank goodness he lives with me. He wasn't living with me at the time, so that gave him a chance so he could come home and I could help him through this. So, and he's still with me. So that's really wonderful. So he's still trying to figure out the sprinkler though, but
exactly. Now, I know about the sprinklers because you told me about that before we started. But did you mention it at the beginning? But tell everybody about the sprinklers.
Well, the sprinkler system, it comes on and off. But when does it come on and off?
Right.
What if it stays on too long? So what if it quits? What if it quits and the yard doesn't get watered? Then what do? You have no idea what the sprinkler system was. Yeah. So I ended up getting with a gardener, gave him the manual, had him come and look at it. We figured it out, but it's those little things. Yeah. Like I had some patio work done, and the men cut the gas line, so I didn't have any gas. So I called the gas company and I told them. They said, "Well, you're not on the account. We can't help you." So they had to come in, shut the gas off, close out the account, open up another one. Took 2 days, but we got it back on. And it's little things like that you take for granted. I called the electric company because I wanted to put it where they do an average and will bill you an average instead of the lump sums all at once. And they said, "Well, you're not on the account." And I says, "I've been paying the bills for almost 60 years. She says, "But ma'am, you're not on the account." I says, "Well, then let's open up a new account." She says, "Okay." I says, "Now, can I have the equaled out rates?" She says, "No, we have no track record for you."
Oh, no.
It was just silly things that seemed so silly. Yeah. And our plan was that our home, we have an extra room in it, and it was going to be in case we need to have someone come in and care. So we figured something was going to happen to one of us, and the other one would take care of that. And if we had to have a nurse come in, we have room to have a nurse come in, and we would live in the house forever. I'm sure most couples have some type of plan. Well, don't count on it.
Just shows, doesn't it? So, oh gosh, yeah, the bills, that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to be able to sort out the utilities, the bank, all of these things. And I mean, in your book, you've shared a list of what others should know to do before tragedy strikes. So to plan, I guess, right? Which is what you were saying. So give us a highlight, 2 or 3 of the highlights of the most essential items from that list.
Well, the most important is to have a family trust and a will. A lot of our friends, I could see, why would I need a will? I'm not going anywhere. And that's kind of the attitude that a lot of people take. And a trust, they don't bother with a trust because everything's happy and good luck. Well, we were concerned because our traveling back and forth to the river, as often as he went, something could happen. What would happen to one of us or both of us? What would happen with both of us?
Yeah.
Where would all our assets go in our finances? So that's why we put together the family trust. And as a coincidence, that last weekend that we went, I had just got the recorded deed on the house in the mail. I said, Randall, let's just wait a minute. I'm going to run down to the bank and put this in the bank and get it in our name before we go. That would have been a mess if I hadn't.
Well, that's
That
true.
would have been a mess.
Mm.
And people who have other kids, and I've seen a lot of families fall apart because they didn't have a trust. There was no telling what the parents or somebody wanted, and then all of a sudden money becomes an issue. If you've got it written down in black and white, there is nothing to fight about. So I would say the family trust is the most important. The other thing is to check and make sure that both of you are on all your credit cards, your utilities, everything like that. And if you're not the one paying the bill, and everybody does it online right now, you better have those passwords,
Yeah.
because they're just. I will tell you an incident of one of my friends who all this happened to her once.
Hmm.
She was so Randall died in October, and this is November the following month. One of his very best friends. And she called me. She said, Tammy, Jack is dead. I just found him on the couch and he's dead. I says, I'll be right there. So Carol, the wife, is in a wheelchair, one leg, and he did everything. He did all the cooking. He did all the banking. She, totally taken care of. She didn't, and they had several vehicles. She didn't know where the pink slips were on the vehicle. She didn't know where her bank was. She didn't know how to get into the ATM. She wasn't too sure about the mortgage. She heard that they were getting ready to foreclose. I mean, she was lost.
Right.
And she had 2 daughters, well, really 3. And if they'd had that trust, he would have had to get all those documents out for the trust. And that, so I felt so sorry for him. So sorry for him.
Yeah.
That's just one example.
Oof, it's just extra stress over the, as you said, the worst day of your life and the aftermath. Oh, it continues, doesn't it? I mean, you considered yourself independent, right? And ready for anything because, you've brought up children, you've had a life, So what did this experience reveal about really true preparedness? And I think that it's important to think about women, I think, because as you say, oftentimes it's fallen in historically on the man to do these things, right? Things may be changing nowadays, but what do you think about that?
Well, I just took too much for granted.
Right.
I just took too much for granted.
As your husband probably wanted you to do, right? He didn't want you to worry about that stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for men.
Mm.
Your wife is paying the bills. She's doing it all online. Maybe she handles the insurance, stuff like that. You better know what's going on. You better get all those passwords.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that was the biggest thing is you don't know what you've got till it happens, and it might be too late. So back to the purpose of the book is to make women aware of, don't get caught like I did. Don't be the one left behind. The other thing is paperwork. After someone's deceased, you have all this paperwork to fill out. If you do cars, you have to get the pink slips. You have to take those, get transferred, get things like that transferred. And if you've got any investments, life insurance, you've got all this paper coming in the mail. And who thought I could handle anything if I hadn't had some corporate background, which I did, I would have sat at that kitchen table and bawled my eyes out trying to figure out all that paperwork.
Mm.
So when you go in to talk about this and maybe to the utilities or an investment, when you talk to that person, have them highlight what you need to read and what you need to sign. Don't have them just ship the paper to you. Have them highlight it, because that'll save a lot of time on the phone trying to figure out what you're supposed to sign and what does it mean. So that was another lesson.
Gosh, I mean, I'm learning listening to you, to be honest. As you say,
Think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm thinking, hang on a second, the wife does the banking. I'm thinking, hang on. It's true though. It's true. So, okay, so let's move on from there, because you mentioned something in your book which I think is really, really interesting. Basically, you went to a medium, didn't you? You reached out to a medium in hopes of connecting with Randall, and you wanted to be
Yes.
able to, to obviously try and connect in some way. But what made you decide to explore that path?
Okay. I think this is a good story.
Mm.
It had a good ending too. I got the invitation from Las Vegas. J-Lo was going to be on. And before Randall died, there was a screens when we went to Vegas. He says, "Oh, Tam, we got to go see J-Lo." I says, "I know it." So I got the invitation. Well, I wasn't going by myself. So I called my daughter and I said, "When you want to go with me, the rooms are comped." She says, "Great." So when we got there, of course, there wasn't any Randall Miller. So they didn't, they were going to take the comp away from me on the rooms, but they didn't. But they did cancel my J-Lo tickets.
Yeah.
And they took all my points,
Oh,
which means no more invitations, no more comping. So we
oh,
had all this time on our hands. Mindy and I were looking, what are we going to do? We like to gamble and we're not going to hang out at the bar. So what would you like to do? She says, "How about a fortune teller? Let's find out what's in store for us." I says, "Okay." She says, "Maybe a medium." Sounds good to me. So she Googled and found one at a casino not very far from us. When we got there, and of course, I didn't have positive thoughts. I thought all this kind of stuff was hoaxy and, they just
mm,
make up stuff. And I was very careful not to feed them any information because I figured that's how they're going to lead me on. So anyway, she asked why we were there, and we said my husband recently passed away, and is there any information you could give us? She described, to her, was the front room where he passed away, in the recliner, the color of the recliner, the other furniture in the room, the compressions that I gave, and about going to the hospital. And she just hit the head on the nail about so many things. You could not believe her. You had, it was all too good.
mm.
We got ready to leave and she says, "Oh," she says, "I see him with another man. Is there someone else that has died recently?" Well, Mindy and I looked at, we had someone who had lost a wife. And she says, "Oh no, it's a man." I says, "No, you must be mistaken. That hasn't been anybody we know." So when we walked out, we got into the parking lot. Mindy turned and she says, "It was Jeff." Jeff was his nephew, his brother's son, had passed away 6 months earlier and liked to fish. And so we figured they were together. So then we get home, we tell our granddaughter all about this exciting news, seeing this medium. Well, she felt like she really missed out on something. So she started Googling and got a hold of a medium that had groups of people, 10 people at a time. And she was in Santa Ana. And we said, "Oh, well, let's give it a try. Sound like a fun adventure." So she went. My son wasn't going to go. No, he doesn't need any of this. His girlfriend went. My daughter went. Her husband went. And my granddaughter. So we got there signing up or whatever. And we were in this group. And there's 10 people in this room. And my granddaughter is sitting right next to me. And she was the closest to him. And so there was this other lady was on that end. So it was this other lady, my granddaughter, and me, and then my daughter. And the medium says, I see him standing between you and your granddaughter. So of course we both looked, we couldn't see him. We thought that's a bunch of crock. And she says, I see him with a baby. It's a baby whose feet have never touched the ground. That just didn't make any sense at all. And we just sit there kind of puzzled. And she said, did you lose a child? I said, I did. She says, well, they're together. Well, hook, line, and singer. She had me. That was just more than I could ever expect. So she said, he's really chatty. He wants to talk when she has to get to the other people. So she says, you really need a personal reading. Well, okay. Well, we'll see about that. So when we got done, we were just so excited about everything that she had said. And we watched the other people in the room, and whatever she told them was right on the head. They knew everything. She was just so good and such a pleasant person. So we got home and I said, well, she said we need a private reading. I said, do you think she would do a group at the house? So I called her and I asked her if she would do a group at the house, because now my other granddaughter wants to hear about this and she wants to be part of it. And she said she would. She would come, a group of 10. And she said I could invite just enough people for 10. So when she came, and it was really funny, and I can't explain it, when she came in the door, the minute we hugged, I felt something. It was not a shock, but it was just really different. I have no idea what that was. But I know she can't drive in a car alone, because her images come when she's driving and she could have a wreck.
Right.
Anyway, so she was talking to my one granddaughter, not the other one. And she says, Dariana, she said, I'm going to have a wedding. And she says, I'm just brokenhearted because my papa's not going to be there. And we were going to have our first dance together. She says, I just don't know how to get over it. She says, well, she says, he'll be there. She said, how would we know? She says, something will happen during the wedding or the reception, and you will know he's here. So, and she talked to the other ladies, who hitting everything on their husbands, their fathers came forward, everything. And she says, and you, she looked at me, she says, the other night, you felt something on your back and you reached over, you thought it was the dog, because my dog was sleeping, but it wasn't. The dog was at the other end of the bed. She says, that was him. He was there and he was touching your back. I said, well, what else happened? I said, I saw him above me like an image, and I reached out and I yelled, Randall. And when I did that, he was gone. But how did she know that? I hadn't told anybody that. I hadn't told the kids. I hadn't told anybody that. So that was just another thing that I truly believed in her. Wow. And I had maybe went back 2 or 3 more times, because he would come forward and he would say, I was at the hospital. I saw everybody there. I saw you do the compression. He says there was nothing you could do. And he would talk about things that he saw, and a few things that he was sorry for. Yeah. But it was just such a peaceful feeling afterwards that I got to talk to him. Yeah. So I went back a couple more times. And one of the last times, he didn't come forward like he always did. But he did come forward on one thing. Remember the fellow I told you that had passed away and his wife was in the wheelchair?
Mm.
He came forward and he says, I want to thank you for taking care of Carol. He says, it was so nice what you did, and it was so good, and I really appreciate it. Well, when she wanted to drive, I knew she couldn't. She said she wanted to get her a car so that she could drive with handles. And I gave her a check to get that taken care of so she could have that. But
That's
I
nice.
thought that was so nice. And the medium says, and they're together. And I thought, oh, look out, Lord. Here comes trouble.
The two of them together, right?
Yeah, but that was the last time because there was something like made me feel like this is enough. You can't just keep living like this.
Well,
So I accepted that. Yeah, that was the last time. But boy, that was really something.
it's incredible. You know, you had a really good experience there. I mean, but what would you say to people then who are, because obviously there's lots of people who are skeptical about mediumship or spiritual connections. I mean, were you skeptical before this? I mean, what would you say to those skeptics after your own experience?
Oh, there. You broke up.
Oh, I broke up. Sorry, sorry. Well, basically, what I was saying is, at the end of the day, there's lots of people who are skeptical about mediums and things like that. I mean, what would you say to those people after your experience of going to a medium? And were you skeptical yourself before you first went?
Yes, I was skeptical. If I hadn't had the one in Las Vegas that was able to pinpoint it on,
Yeah.
you know, I could then maybe this one that I went to in Santa Ana might have been a fluke because I had a dear friend that I was seeing after Randall passed, and he died of a stroke. And I thought, I just wonder if everything's okay with him. I'm going to go to a medium and find out what she has to say. Well, I didn't go back to the one that I went to before, and I should have. But she was further away on a drive. This was closer. So I went. When I went to the first one, you never had to give any names. You just give the initial, and she would come up the name of who you were talking about. This one that I was going to now had to have that, had to know different things about him. I was feeding her all the information, and he never really came forward. She just kind of asked questions and answered them. So she was not a true one. And she wanted to do candles and she wanted to do other things. And I thought, no, this is just a program and it's not for me. So there are those out there that aren't real. So you better do your research and maybe find somebody that's already been to this person or look for reviews. Maybe there's reviews on the internet.
That's a good idea. Yeah, and that's true. So
Yeah.
along with the mediums, obviously your family really helped and you all stayed together and
Oh, yes.
each
We
other.
still talk about it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really great. But we're starting to run out of time, by the way, Tamara. So
Okay.
I'm sorry about this. It's fascinating. We could talk for ages. But writing about loss, as I asked you, questions about loss earlier on, it can reopen wounds. And I'm sorry if that's done that, but I guess it's quite good for you to be able to talk about these things. Is that part of the emotional process of writing the book? Did that help you to sort of, come to terms with it?
Oh, I had regrets that I didn't help my mother better when my dad died because I could see the needs that I had, you
Mm.
know. And my great grandmother, I felt bad that I had never told her I loved her enough, you know, because I never got to tell Randall I loved him. And that was one of the worst parts. And people would come to me and they'd say, oh, I give you condolences, but my husband was really sick and I took care of him for a long time. And I wanted to yell at them. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Because they had an opportunity to say goodbye. I didn't. I didn't get to say I love you. And that has just left so much emptiness with me. So
I feel for you on that. My wife's dad died on the way back from work from the office, and I know that my mum's so I'm getting emotional myself. My wife's mother feels the same way, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, totally. So I completely get that. Um, yeah. So obviously, Tamara, give us finally one piece of wisdom or encouragement that you'd
Okay.
like to leave with listeners who may be, walking through unexpected loss right now.
Well, if it happens to you, stay busy. Stay busy. Don't sit and do nothing. Find a volunteer group. Find a women's group. Do something. Get busy. You have to reinvent yourself. Okay. I was Tammy Randall's wife for many years. And then I was Tammy, Corey and Mindy's mother. I'm still that Mindy. But you got to remember you're alive. So there's certain you have to reinvent yourself. Now I'm Tammy Miller, the author of 66 books. I'm Tammy Miller. I was the president of a women's club of volunteers. And I think everybody has a story to tell. Start telling it. Find a writing group. That's how mine all started, was just things that had happened to me. So I think that is really rewarding. Although writing this book, I cried through the whole thing. I'd have to put it down and I come back to it later. It was very difficult, and I really haven't been able to write since. So
Yeah.
just reinvent yourself.
Top tip. Right.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Tammy, it's been so fantastic talking to you. And I think that you've probably heard it often, so I don't want to say it, but you've been really strong. But you've reinvented yourself, and I think that's really crucial as well. And I think that's such a good point to make for everyone. So, folks, that's it. We're out of time, which is a real shame. But I hope that you've learned something. Now, that was Tamara L. Miller, and she was sharing her heartfelt and courageous story, right, from her newly republished book, What the Hell Just Happened. So, as you know, it's a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, there's strength, clarity, and hope to be found. So, if her story moved, or if you want to be better prepared for life's unexpected challenges, more like, we highly encourage you to grab a copy of her book on Amazon. Just search for What the Hell Just Happened by Tamara L. Miller and discover why this book is touching hearts and opening minds. Thank you again for joining us on the BrightWord Books podcast. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. So until
Thank
next
you,
time,
Chris.
hey, no problem at all. Tamara, until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and keep turning the page. It's been lovely to meet you, Tammy. I really enjoyed our little chat.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
speak
very much.
again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.